Good morning, y'all. Okay, husband number two. Now, the way I met my husband was one evening, my girlfriend and I drove over to the little gravel parking lot that was, what is that? Get off of there. Okay. Anyway, we drove over to the gravel parking lot that was across from our little movie theater. It was an old-fashioned theater that had an upstairs balcony and a projection room. Anyway, my baby, my older son, was 10 months old at the time. There was this new car that I didn't recognize. It was a cherry red Nova with the rear end lifted and huge tires on the back. So we wandered over there, and there were a bunch of our, friends over there. And I picked Aaron up and sat him on top of this car, on top of the hood. And one of my baby's favorite things was a cup of ice. So I had a little cup of ice, and I set that up there between his legs. And there were people gathered all around the car. And, of course, I was watching him very closely. Well, in a few minutes, this gorgeous, dark-haired guy with a mustache, a small mustache, came over and said, "Whose baby is this?" Well, now, in the meantime, Aaron had dropped ice on top of this car and rubbed his feet around, which were black from walking around. Yes, he walked early. And so he'd made quite a mess on top of this car. So I said, "He's mine." And he said, "You do realize I just waxed this car?" And I said, in my smart alecky, sarcastic way, "Well, then the water's beating up just fine, and I should be able to wipe it right off." God, I was a brat. But anyway, one thing led to another, and I gave my baby to my girlfriend who was living with us at the time. And I was going to go for a ride with this gentleman. Now, you guys, he was extremely handsome to me. Maybe not to other people. I don't know. Well, we went for a ride. We got on the freeway. And I was thinking, okay, now this guy is going to show off in his hot rod. And I am going to be completely unimpressed. To my surprise, he drove the speed limit, maybe a little bit, faster, but he definitely was not trying to peel out, do a donut, go at the highest speed he could get his car to go to. We just talked, and we talked, and we talked. He was on leave from the Army. His leave was up in about 7 or 8 days, and so we really hit it off. So we spent every moment together, day and night. And no, we did not have a physical relationship past a little kissing. Now, before people start stomping on me, my baby was with us most of the time. He had a regular bedtime, so about 8 o'clock, 8:30, he went to sleep, and my girlfriend would babysit for me while this gentleman and I went to a movie or did whatever. Mostly we talked a lot. So, the physical part of our relationship would have progressed, but he didn't want to. Not that he didn't want to, but he said no. He said, "I know how you are by now. I've got you figured out." and that would only leave you feeling terrible about yourself, which he was right. I was not a promiscuous woman. I had just gotten a divorce from my first husband. Well, one thing led to another, y'all, and before I knew it, he took me by his parents' house. A couple aunts and uncles were there, brothers and sisters. They were having a little family get-together. So we went in, he introduced me to everybody. We sat down on the couch and there was some chit-chat going on. And the next thing I knew, he said to his parents, Debrajoy and I are going to get married. He grabbed me by the hand and we left the house. Yeah, first I'd heard of it. So we got outside and got in the car and I said, oh, what are you talking about? And he said, I love you. And I want to get married. Now, I'd known him for 6 days. I said, okay. Good Lord. But anyway, I went by the house. I talked to my girlfriend. I told her, don't go anywhere. We're going to be gone overnight. We'll be back tomorrow afternoon. Now, in Arkansas, you had to get a license. And before you could get that license, you had to get a blood test. But if you went over the line to Oklahoma, they didn't require that. And I told her, don't leave the house unless you go to my parents. I don't want his daddy to find out that I'm gone because he will be pissed. So Lewis and I left. We left in the middle of the night and we drove to Oklahoma, got a motel room. We still did not have a physical relationship. We got up the next morning, went to have some breakfast. We were so nervous, both of us. And we both said at the same time, if you want to back out. And then we started laughing. We didn't want to back out. So as soon as the courthouse opened, we requested a justice of the peace. And we were in our jeans and I can't remember what kind of shirt I had on, you guys, and he had on a t-shirt, and we got married. We left the courthouse. We came back to BB, and my car was parked at my parents' house, and we had to go by there on our way into town. So we stopped. When we went in, my girlfriend was bawling her eyes out. Somehow, my first husband had found out that I was gone, and he had taken my baby from my girlfriend. Now, she had gone over to her sister's house. She wasn't supposed to, but she did. I flipped out. And I've told you this story before about what happened. So anyway, my husband called his CO and explained the situation to him, and he got 2 days extended on his leave, and that was all. He had to go back to Washington. He was stationed at Fort Lewis. I stayed in the meantime to get my baby back. The judge awarded my ex-husband 2 weeks visitation after he ordered him to give the baby back. So I flew to Washington to spend a couple of weeks with my new husband. Now, y'all, let me tell you what happened. I don't know how this occurred, whether it was the airline's fault, whether it was my fault, but when I got off the airplane, there was a janitor there by the ladies' room, and he was mopping. And I said, sir, what city am I in? He goes, ma'am, you in Washington, D.C. Oh, my God, you guys. I could not believe it. somehow, instead of going to Tacoma, Washington, or Seattle, I ended up in Washington, D.C. Now, let me tell you, I was not a happy camper, and I had myself a little hissy fit. They got me back on the next plane going to SeaTac. So I got there, and of course, my luggage was missing. We went by the mall. My husband went in to JCPenney's, bought me some undies, and then I spent the next 2 days wearing his shirts and my new undies. So anyway, I came back. I had to fly back to Arkansas to pick up my baby. He was so happy to see me. He was so happy to see his mommy. So then we flew back to Washington. We had a wonderful marriage, and he was so good to my baby. Treated him just like he was his own. We had so much fun, you guys. It was awesome. We were so in love. And every time I would look at him, turn to look at him while we were in the car, my heart would just speed up. Hormones, I guess. But anyway, we did really well. At the end of his stint in the Army, he had 13 months left to go. This is going to be a longer video. And he got orders to go to Germany. Now, you're not supposed to get orders to go overseas when you have such a short time left, but he did. He was gone about 4 months and wrote to me and said, Deb, you and the baby have to come over here. You have to come over here. I can't stand the separation. So we did. We got a flight to Germany. It was so sweet, you guys. The plane was nearly empty, and it was an awesomely huge jet. So the stewardesses took care of my baby while I took a nap. That's how awesome they were. When we got off the plane, they gave my baby a bottle of champagne to take to his daddy so we could celebrate. We spent 6 months in Germany. It wasn't easy because we didn't qualify for base housing, so we had to get an apartment out in town. Now, let me tell y'all something. When these people clean, they clean. I mean, it's so true. When you see duvets hanging out the windows, ladies outside slopping down the sidewalks and their porch, they do that every day. So anyway, my husband had met this German psychiatrist, and he happened to have an apartment on the 13th floor of this big building in Stuttgart. And he gave it to us to live in. He said, I don't use it. I have another big apartment. He was a psychiatrist, and he practiced in Sweden because of the lower tax rate. So anyway, we did, and I promptly got the mumps. Now, being in a one-room bathroom studio with an 18-month-old baby, he was about 18 months by then, and having the mumps, that was not fun. But I still was so glad to be there with my husband. I came back early to find us a home, and found a little house in Jacksonville, about 25 minutes away from BB, where his parents lived, where my parents lived, yada, yada, yada. So Lewis was getting, well, anyway, y'all don't know him, couldn't find him. He was getting out, and I was due to pick him up, and this was like the day before Thanksgiving. So I was up very early, and I was getting all primped up, you know, my hair was down my back, and I was doing it and putting on some face and everything. And then I was getting the baby ready. We were going to pick up my husband at the airport. Well, about 6:30, I get a knock on my door. It's my father-in-law and my brother-in-law. And he said, Deb, we're going to pick up Lewis at the airport, and we thought you might like to go with us. You guys, I could have had a mini stroke right there. Now, this is the beginning of the parents, of the in-laws. So I said, sure, why not? We got to the airport, and when Lewis got off the plane, he looked at me, then he looked at his father and brother, and the expression on his face was indescribable. He was shocked. He was pissed. So, my father-in-law drove us back to our little house and dropped us off. And he said, now, Lewis, tomorrow's Thanksgiving, and your mother is expecting you for dinner. They drove off. My husband and I had a very sweet, loving welcome home. And then we sat down to discuss this Thanksgiving dinner on the day after. By now it was late afternoon. And he said, I don't want to go. And I said, well, neither do I. I thought we would have a couple of days to ourselves. But then we decided to keep from having a big family row that we would go and stay for a couple of hours and then come home. We also discussed the audacity of his father and brother thinking that they were the ones that needed to meet him when he got off that plane. He was really upset. Anyway, we went to dinner. Ended up staying most of the day, and then we came home. Well, he got a job with Avis as a mechanic. He was an awesome mechanic, you guys. He could take cars apart and put them back together completely. Engine, transmission, the whole bit. So he got this job. We bought a little house. Now, he had a twin brother. And his twin brother and his wife became our constant companions. They bought a house, we bought a house. They had a little boy about 6 months older than our little boy. And so we hung out together all the time and had a blast. The phone call started. Every Saturday morning, his dad would call and say, Lou, I'm having a problem with my truck. Can you come help me? So he would get up, get his clothes on, and head to BB. He would be gone all the frickin' day. And of course, this made me angry. We would have plans to go to a movie or have dinner with his brother and wife, but it didn't matter. He was gone all day. And then it switched from his dad calling to his mother. I could hear his mother on the phone, you guys. We were in bed, 6:30 Saturday morning. She would call, and I would hear her say, Lou, if you would just divorce this bitch, I'll pay for it. Well, we went on like that for about a year. Him standing me up all the time in favor of his family. They had this problem. They had that problem. I tried going with him a few times, but all I got was the cold shoulder. And finally I said, I'm not going over there anymore. Now, he would not stand up for me. You know, when you get married, you're supposed to cleave to your spouse. They're supposed to be first in your life. But I discovered throughout this marriage how dysfunctional this family was. He told me that he never remembered his parents sharing a room. This was the lady who cooked coon butt for Thanksgiving dinner one time. I have to admit, that was pretty shocking, and it was really funny. Anyway, I tried to get him to take a job in another town. He had a really good job offer. It was about 150 miles away, something like that. And I felt like that if we put some distance between his family, our marriage would survive. We still loved each other very much, but this was really, really coming between us. Now, he was a wussy when it came to his family. Like I said, he didn't stand up for me. He was no longer my husband during the week, but on the weekends, I told him, Lou, if we don't move away from here, our marriage is not going to last. Well, he wouldn't take another job, and he wouldn't move. So finally, the stress and the tension got to me so bad that I told him I was leaving. So I left. He tried to get me to come back. But you guys, I knew he was not going to change, no matter how much he said he was going to. His family wouldn't allow that. He came over one night to visit. We were standing outside on the sidewalk, and it was pouring down rain, and I was in this little tiny apartment community shaped like a horseshoe. So we were standing out there. He got so pissed at me, he threw me down on the ground and actually pushed my head down in the water. It had been raining very hard, and I thought he was going to drown me. Well, a couple of my neighbors came out and pulled him off of me. I guess I just incite violence. You guys, I don't know. But anyway, that was it. After 4 years, I got a divorce. It was really hard because I still loved him very much. And, but I knew it was something I needed to do. I had suffered abuse in my first marriage, and I was not having it. Now, there were a couple of times, he begged me to come back. I almost caved in once, but I didn't. So that's it, you guys. That's pretty much it for husband number 2. Yes, I should have waited to marry him. Of course I should have. That was just crazy. But you guys, I'm going to tell you the honest truth. We would probably still be married had we not moved back home by his parents. Up until that point, he was an awesome husband and daddy. So, yes, if I'd have waited and been around his family, I would have known how dysfunctional that whole family was. But I didn't. Him having to leave and not being able to come back for a long time had a lot to do with it, I think. But anyway, that's it for husband number 2. Please, y'all, don't try to shame me or make me feel guilty or yada, yada, yada. This is my life, and I'm sharing it with you just because it is part of my life. So anyway, I know you all have stories of your own. I want you to do something fun today, and I will talk to you guys later. Thank you. Bye now.